This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, great.
We are live, and I think I'm continuing to admit people.
Okay, wonderful. Okay. Well, again, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this session called Silence as Pilgrimage. Silence is Coming Home. I am currently serving with Stephanie at the Arkansas House of Prayer. And as you may know, Arkansas House of Prayer is an interfaith haven set apart in nature, dedicated to contemplative prayer, silence, and meditation. And it's we're all are welcome. So it's a beautiful mission and a beautiful space. And so we're just privileged to be a part of this ministry at this time. Just a couple of reminders, and again, Stephanie mentioned that this is going to be recorded so that folks who aren't able to join us today, may be able to view it at another time. So within our time period, we're going to have a couple of times of silent meditation, shared silence. And, if you're not comfortable being visible during that, you simply turn your camera off. So it's just a little reminder just to do what you're comfortable with. This morning, Stephanie, if you could go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint. I'm going to primarily use the PowerPoint as my prompt for the sharing.
Let me know when you can see that.
I can see. I think you need to do full screen.
Yeah, I'm about to do full screen.
Okay.
Hang on just a second. And I'm going to do. It's been a moment since I've done one of these. Oh.
Down at the very bottom on that little orange bar, you just click on the icon.
I'm fighting. I'm getting there. I'm just fighting between.
The next. No, you were on it. Go the other way. Go to the right. The next one. That one.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So let's just go to the next slide. I'm just going to share a little bit of how I see our time together. We'll spend a few minutes just welcoming and doing a few introductions, and perhaps if you feel comfortable sharing just whatever drew you here for this presentation this morning. And a little bit different, not so much how are you, but how do you come? Do you come with anxiety, or with peacefulness, or with anticipation, or do you come a little tired at the end of a week? Just a word or two, how you come. So we'll do that for a few minutes, and then I'll share a bit of wisdom on this idea of pilgrimage and silence. And I'm drawing heavily from other wisdom sources, so I can't claim the wisdom, but I can certainly tell you that I look out for it, and I try to grab it wherever I can find it in my own life. We will have then an opportunity for about 10 minutes of shared silence. And following that, again, an opportunity just to share a little bit of what did we notice, what we might wonder about the experience of silence and shared silence. The next slide, Stephanie. So then part two, and in some ways, these are not hard and fast. They kind of go back and forth throughout the whole presentation, but the idea of coming home, silence as bringing us home, deepening our silence. So we'll have a little bit more input, and then we'll repeat the shared silence. Again, repeat anything anyone would like to offer about that experience. And then we'll close with a little exercise called Silence Is, if the time works out. And then just a very brief closing. So that's how I envision our time. And Stephanie, if you go to the next one, please. So with that, we'll just begin. This workshop I gave actually before the pandemic. It's the last in-person workshop we were able to give at the House of Prayer. It was February of 2020. And at that time, of course, one of the benefits, of course, at that time was that we could do it on site and that we could literally, physically take the pilgrimage from the classroom setting at St. Margaret's to the house of prayer, and actually make the walk, and you might say simulate the pilgrimage to silence. But of course, we're not able to do that this morning, but we're still going to do the pilgrimage, of course. We've learned, I think one of the lessons we've learned through COVID is that the pilgrimage is the sacred place that we can go to is always right within us and around us, wherever we are. And I think for COVID, during the COVID months, people had that experience of more quiet time or being at home more. And the challenge, of course, then is to find that sacred space of pilgrimage within your own home, perhaps. So the next slide.
Try it.
So pilgrimage, the word itself, we attach spiritual importance to particular places when we go on pilgrimage. Internally, it's a journey or search of moral, spiritual significance. Literally, it can be a physical journey to a shrine or a sacred place, but it's a journey to a place of calling, awakening, or of connecting with the divine. And of course, in many, many of major spiritual traditions, it is a part of spiritual practice to go on pilgrimage. Okay, the next, please. So of course, I hope you've had a chance to literally be at the house of and make pilgrimage, and I know that many of you have. So we'll just kind of imagine that as our backdrop. Okay, the next one, please. I want to start with a scripture from the Hebrew tradition, the Jewish tradition, the story of Elijah. And what I'm borrowing here is a reflection from a rabbi, a teacher in the Jewish tradition. And the story is, of course, that Elijah was asleep in the cave, and he heard this question. Of course, that in itself is the case for silence. Why silence? Not necessarily for withdrawal or passivity but how about for listening? How about for deep listening and availability? So Elijah is in the cave and he says, he hears the question, why are you here? Depressed and forlorn, his answer was simple. I am the zealous one, the only one left. But Elijah misunderstood. He was not being asked, who are you? Next slide. The question, why are you here, is a gentle, inviting question. And it might be better translated, where are you, Elijah, in the process of your becoming? So we'll take a pause here. And I think now that we have our participants here, could we just kind of shift back and let folks kind of say what drew them to come this morning and how you come, just briefly. And again, if you care not to share, that's fine. Just whoever would like to offer that.
I can begin.
Okay, Nancy.
Yeah, I'll start. What brought me here is just the practice of silence and the blessing of doing it in community. I actually, as I mentioned, I wouldn't be here if I didn't, find your labyrinth on the Worldwide Labyrinth Locator. And Sister Deborah, just my conversation with you and just experiencing your depth, just wanted me to be here this morning. So I'm deeply grateful.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
I could talk. I almost echo what Nancy said. The having access to a place, whether it's a physical access, which is wonderful, or even a virtual access that allows us to be together this morning, the access to that silence and a place where the silence is recognized and valued has become really valuable in my life. And in my livingness, if you think of that as how you live your life. So or how I live my life, I'll say. So I'm just grateful, Sister Deborah, for your flexibleness, because I know that until just a couple of days ago, this was designed to be a hybrid program where some of us would be physically at the St. Margaret's and the House of Prayer. So, but good morning and thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, I will go. Good morning. My name is Joan, and really enjoyed being out at the House of Prayer the last several years, or a couple of years. Currently, I am going through Retreat in Daily Life, which is a 30-week Ignatian experience. And I've really been learning, being out at the House of Prayer, but specifically through this Retreat in Daily Life, that prayer for me is becoming more about being rather than saying and doing and experiencing. It's more about just being with God and doing some of that deep listening that you talked about with Elijah, that is becoming more of who I am, is just appreciating, listening, kind of like what I talk about with my kids, is just kind of hanging out with God. So that's kind of why I'm here, is how to increase that ability to listen in silence.
I'll share next. I'm Sheila, and I have been a volunteer at a House of Prayer for a while, and had a sort of major transition, I guess, in my life last fall when my mom passed away at the age of 98. And I have been feeling more of a need for sort of withdrawal from community, I suppose, at this point. But when I saw this email come across my desk and I hadn't seen Deborah or Stephanie in a while, I mainly logged on so I could see who was here and and be with a group of people who are comfortable and are curious about silence as a practice. That's been mine for a while now, and I have found great solace in my times of silence alone, but also silence with others, which I think is something that often people find odd. I know my husband always says, so you're going to log on Zoom and just sit there. It's like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that there are so many people who are curious and or love times of being in a group, but not having to participating at whatever level you feel comfortable with. So thanks, Deborah, again for having us, and Stephanie for gathering some people together to do this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'm sorry, this is Peggy Wells. I still can't get my camera to work. So I guess I've reached the point where technology has passed me by. But anyway, Sorry, there's no picture. I started a practice of silence probably about 4 years ago and was going to the house of prayer weekly and experienced such peace. And for various reasons, got out of that practice. And I just want to get back into it again, just for the feeling of peace.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Howison? You're muted. You're muted.
Thank you. That's a habit I haven't broken. Yes, I've been enjoying the once a month Tuesday gatherings when I've been able to make those. And sometimes when I have not been able to attend, I've tuned in afterwards. And it's, you know, I echo what some other people have said, that being in community with people who are at a place in their lives where they feel an invitation to sit with God quietly in silence and to listen, that being in community feels like a part of almost like a healing, right? To be in a group of people who are experiencing that as well. And so I'm very grateful to have a Saturday morning. After a long week, I do bring myself a little tired to this place, and to be with a group of people who are experiencing something similar, and exploring. I guess I'm exploring ways to live out that silence more fully in my life right now. And so this is a delightful place to be, and I'm really grateful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Another couple minutes. We'll see if anyone else. Okay. Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and gather up some wisdom. This has been rich with. Uh-oh, I'm getting a little feedback. Okay. Well, this has been rich with wisdom. So we'll gather this wisdom and add to it. So Stephanie, if you can bring me back, is it possible to share the screen and then I can just move those along? No, okay, whatever works, okay. Okay, so that's where we were. So the story of Elijah goes on to say, you know, the answer he discovered in terms of when, as a result of his listening, was God did not show up the way God was expected to typically show up, not in the great winds, the splitting mountains, the shattering rocks, the blazing fire. Those were all the metaphors for the forcefulness and power of God and how God shows up. God was not there, but God was there. And what he discovered, the next slide, he heard this silent, thin voice. The Jewish rabbi translates it silent, thin voice. He says that's the real translation. Often we probably know it better by the soft, still voice or the still, small voice. And it always makes me think, I had a teacher in high school, and you know, we were quite talkative, and the way she'd get our attention is she would whisper something. And that got us quiet so fast because we wanted to, like, the minute you hear somebody whisper, you stop because you want to know what they're whispering. So I think it's a great strategy that God has, you know, that God speaks through this silent, still voice, this whisper, and we have to be still enough and quiet enough to catch it. So a silent, thin voice. What a paradox. How can a voice be silent? But again, many religious traditions teach us that when our minds are quiet, we can hear things we otherwise would have missed, and we can encounter ourselves in our silence. And Elijah entered that kind of silence. So that's from Rabbi Kula. Thomas Merton, another great teacher of meditation and contemplation, contemplative prayer, says that recollection makes us present to ourselves. And it makes us present to whatever reality is most significant in this moment of time in which we are living. So the idea of the gift of silence, it may seem like withdrawal, and yet the fruit of that silence can be this quality of recollection that actually makes us more present in the moment to whatever we may be invited to or confronted with. And then he goes on to say, and this quality of recollection, the fruit of silence, makes us present to God, present to ourselves in God, and present to everything else in God. Above all, it brings God's presence to us. A woman who I have a lot of respect for, she founded the Sisters of Mercy, and she was greatly influenced by her guardian parents who were Quakers. So she brought to our spirituality of our community the appreciation for silence. And she said, she wrote, to obtain recollection, we must entertain a great love for silence. And again, that was so, that's why I put the globe there. That's for the engagement in the world. You come from a different place, having this love for silence. Okay, keep going. And then another great spiritual leader, I think he's being rediscovered these days, Howard Thurman. He said, he wrote, there's a very great virtue in the cultivation of silence and strength to be found in using it as a door to God. So the obvious, why might a silent practice be especially suited for our times? I think the picture says it all. And then I like to draw from this gentleman, Robert Sardello. This book is a rich resource for me. I read about a sentence at a time because it's dense. But just a few excerpts from this book called Silence, the Mystery of Wholeness. He says, in terms of entering the silence, he says, we have a strong tendency to imagine silence as the absence of sound. And this imagination deprives silence being anything in itself and makes it an emptiness, a void. But silence was here before anything else, and it envelops everything else. It's prior to sound, not the cessation of sound. It was already present. And if we drop into quietness just for a moment, we can feel the presence of silence as an invitation. The most basic experience of silence is intimacy. We feel an intimacy with the world, as if we are within everything around us rather than behind or alongside things that we are then looking at. So it's kind of a oneness experience, a connecting experience. Keeps us intimately bound with the truth of our being. Again, the idea of being present to ourselves in a bodily way, that our individual and unique presence as soul, spirit, and body intermingles with the world, and at the same time lives a free and independent existence. There's a lot in there, but just offer it. Okay. And then I appreciate this. In practicing silence, we're not trying to merge with the cosmos or leave the world for timeless regions, but to imagine silence as radiating everywhere, expanding in all directions, and then the position of entering silence is one of alertness, awareness, presence to the presence, you might say. So it's a work. Silence is a work as well as a phenomenon. And we know the touch of silence does not stay with us. There's so much noise. And it's interesting. I can remember an instance where, you know, someone came to the house of prayer and first time and loved the immediate feeling enveloped by the silence and the quiet and the peace. And then after, you know, we debriefed a little bit, I said, well, how was it? Oh my gosh, she said it was terrible. In what way? Well, it was like the storm within the calm. So much came up within her that it was hard to bear it. It's hard to stay in the silence. But as we know, that's, I think Allison said this, there's a healing there's a healing in this. And it's not always easy. That's why in our culture, I say that generally, but a lot of us are not comfortable with silence because we don't want to look at all that stuff that goes on. It's the interior noise, you might say. And that's what Pope Francis says. He says interior noise makes it impossible to welcome anyone or anything. So, you know, I say it starts from the inside out. Okay, the welcoming. So again, this is the part that can be challenging because we all have that kind of incessant inner talking or commentary that goes on. I always think the news these days is just mostly commentary. And guess what? We've got our own version of that going on all the time inside. 24/7 news, 24/7 commentary. And we know it's that kind of commentary that can keep old charged emotions alive, keep any angers that are unresolved fueled. You know, it's just part of the human condition, you might say. But in the silence, we can sense the debris, you might say, but we are held safely, and I like to call it surround silence versus surround sound. It's surround silence. Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry. So I think that's, so we go back to Elijah. Look at the commentary that was going on in his head. He was asleep, and then, you know, he wakes up physically, but then he has to wake up spiritually, because when he wakes up, there's his commentary. Oh my gosh, he's the only zealous one left. That's what he's saying to himself. So he has to have a moment of awareness. Perhaps he's not the only zealous one left. Okay. And then again, I think the joyful part can be the more familiar we get with this kind of commentary with our own selves, it can actually, there's a sense of playful, I mean, it can be painful, but then the more you get used to it, it's like, oh my God, there it is again. You know, it's almost, there's a little bit of lightness to it. There it is again. And not to be too hard on yourself, too judgmental about a commentary that you just keep finding rising in your heart. Okay, let's go. And this is why I go back to the word of Catherine McCauley. She says that, you know, we have to have the ability to entertain silence. She was a great woman of hospitality. I mean, she literally welcomed everyone and anyone. But I think at levels of this practice, it's a disposition toward everything that rises in your heart. You notice it, you welcome it, you let it come, you let it go. It's non-judgmental. It's your intention of being present in the silence is what matters, you know, for prayer, for healing, for peace. Your deepest desire, that's what comes from God. And that's what draws us to the silence. So, okay, enough talking. Why don't we share some silence? If we'll go to the next slide, please. We'll have about 10 minutes, just a couple reminders as we enter the silence together, the shared silence. Simply make sure you're seated comfortably, close your eyes. Our soft downward gaze is also helpful. We take deep breaths. We exhale and relax. We do several of those breaths, and we let each exhale be a little bit slower than the one before it. The inhale, a little bit deeper than the one before it. And as you start to feel your body settle, you can bring to your awareness your heart center, the place of such energy and where we, in our tradition, believe the spirit dwells deep within our own hearts. And then the next one, simply a reminder, the next slide. When thoughts rise, and they will, you simply lay them aside. You don't dialogue, you don't force them aside, you don't try to stop them. You simply notice and gently return to this awareness, I'm suggesting, of your heart, and you rest there. And if it happens how many times every second, that's okay. Just gently return. So we'll have 10 minutes, and I'll invite you to begin that silence sharing right now. Amen. So be it. So when I suggest sharing a little bit, if we wish, on what we may have noticed or what this may cause us to wonder about, it's really important, again, that this is not evaluative of the 10 minutes. It's not in any way a judgment of how, whether it was good or bad or hard or easy, because that's not, it doesn't matter. What it is. And the mystery is we trust the work is going on a level that many times we don't know. But we can notice, certainly with the gift of awareness, we can notice or we can wonder. So again, anything that anyone would like to share based on those 10 minutes is welcome.
I just noticed a real energy doing that in community that I've not experienced, where when I did start to wander, I almost felt like the group was pulling me back, which was really, it was just a really interesting experience. So thank y'all. I did also notice a lot of what you were talking about, that the debris that comes up. And there were a couple of instances where I got really irritated at somebody. And I realized I was still really angry about something. And so I was able to put it aside and go back to the silence. But now I know, like, I can kind of make mental notes, like, deal with this, look at this again, you know? So that was really good in such a short period of time. I thought that was pretty intense for all of those things to kind of happen just in such a short period of time.
Thank you.
So it's neat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Nancy, I saw your hand go up, Nancy.
So I have another layer of kind of work in my current setting. I have one of those smoke detectors that are out of my reach. So it's so it's like every time it chirped, I'd have to intentionally go back to the silence. You know, the chirp, I'd be aware of it and I'd have to go back. Yeah, and also I do live on off of a busy a highway, so I've been able to integrate the traffic noise in my silence. But now this chirp is a new challenge for me.
I love your attitude toward it. Can smile about it, and it's like a new invitation with every chirp. Sheila, did you want to say something?
Yes, I love that about the chirp. In fact, when I've done a form of Buddhist meditation for years now. And when I first started, one of the teachers that I had, that's sort of a technique to use to bring yourself back into awareness, she had shared with me that she used the telephone, that every time the telephone rang, it was a trigger for her to come back into a place of awareness. So I love that. Buddhists use bells and gongs and things like that a lot for that very reason, is to begin again. And there's the concept of always being a beginner, no matter how long you've been sort of aware of an inner life. We always need a reminder that we're always beginning, and that it's never done. You're never perfect at whatever it is that you're trying to do. So I love that, Nancy. Thank you for sharing that. My experience today was really one of, my mind can go to stories about myself and my situation like that. I mean, that's my challenge always in silence, is for me to stop talking, for me to be silent inside. At first, I remember, wanting, the house of prayer was so important in my journey of silence, because it is a place of silence that I could go to really have the outside world get more silent. I was thinking about how much it is a spiritual home. I love Deborah's the home idea of, I've never really had my own sense of place as much as a home base. That was always sort of in my mom was my home base. So again, I'm sort of in a place now where that's no longer physically a presence for me. So, and I also, just one more thing, I realized in this morning how many times when I am in a place of emotional turmoil, whether it is sadness, whether it's anger, whether it's just whatever is going on, walking the labyrinth. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about the labyrinth, but I remember one being a year ago, the January 6th thing. I went and walked the labyrinth of that day, and I realized I haven't done that in a while. It's time for me to go walk the labyrinth, because that is such a place where I think when I'm moving my body, it's easier for me to drop the story that's going on. So that's another tool, I guess, for silence for me, and getting to that place where I'm quiet enough inside to find a home in my own awareness and my own spiritual self. So I know that's rambling, but
No,
thank you for letting me share.
thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay.
I was just gonna say, Sheila, I often cringe when I get a lot of texts as a priest and as just a person with a lot of friends and family. And so now that's going to be my mindfulness bell. Whenever it goes ding, ding, I'm going to be like, okay, take a breath before I respond to it. And then just a little bit of a look back. All I could think of was Paul McCartney, someone's knocking at the door, someone's ringing a bell. So now every time I hear that, I'm going to think of those two things. And I really appreciate your sharing so much. It really resonated with me also.
Thank you all. This is so rich. I almost hesitate to stop and shift to the other part, but let me do that. Faithfulness to what I said I would do, and then we'll have another chance to share a little bit. Okay. So if we could pick up, we're kind of ready for part 2, which I think, as Sheila really articulated, there's really not 2 parts. It's all one. Inner and the outer. The inner and the outer are one, you might say. But let's talk a little about it as silence, as coming home, as going to that deepening, that deep place where we feel safe. So we know, and Sheila was a perfect prelude to this. When we're home, we feel happy, we feel relaxed, we feel comfortable, we feel safe. That's why it's called home, not just a house, it's a home. it's a place where we feel a deep affection. We feel known, familiar, at ease, place of acceptance. Someone wrote, where love resides, memories are created, friends always belong, and laughter never ends. So home, the deep meaning of home. Maya Angelou says, the ache for home lives in all of us. Safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned. And this book has been helpful to me as well. Martin Laird says, let us journey home. Every spiritual pilgrim is constantly being called home, from the noise that is around us to the joys that are silent. This joy that is silent is already within us. Its discovery is precious beyond compare. And as Sheila noted, there are tools that can help us go find that joy within. Silence is living, dynamic, liberating. The practice of silence nourishes vigilance, self-knowledge, letting go, and the compassionate embrace of all. One of the fruits is awareness. And again, these things are reiterating so much of the wisdom that each of you, or so many of you, have already shared. We deepen the interior silence by training our attention not to spin commentary on the thoughts, feelings, any kind of inner noise that we become aware of. So again, just to repeat, it's a way more joyful than most other spiritual work. The deepening does the clearing. Okay, let's go. And I love this. I think I have put this on my wall, on a poster. When we realize we're the awareness and not the drama unfolding in our awareness, our lives are freer, simpler, and more compassionate. Silence in the mind is when we live best, within listening distance of the silence we call God. It is a presence then, whose margins are our margins, that calls us out over our own fathoms. It's all pervading, from the innermost depths of the human being, whose margins are God's margins, to the widest embrace of human compassion. The fruit of silence, again, doesn't this world need human compassion? And the next one, please. Reminds me a few weeks ago in the Advent season, the scripture, John the Baptist was out there baptizing and calling people to repentance. And what struck me is, you know, the scripture just says all these different kinds of people. They were just crowds and tax collectors and soldiers and everybody. They only had the same question. What can we do? What can we do? You're talking about, you know, changing our lives, change of heart, conversion, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I think what I'm finding is this practice is transformative. It's transformative of your innermost being. So we can surrender to this attraction. I think, Peggy, you had a sense of feeling drawn to peace. You felt you wanted to have more experience of that again. So that's it. We surrendered to that. And then within the period of silence, when we're practicing it, but we don't try to make anything happen. We just allow. That's the letting be. I think Joan talked about just being. It's immense, humble, awe-inspiring, yet so gentle, limitless, tender, intimate, personal. We wait patiently in silence, openness and quiet attentiveness, motionless within and without, and we surrender to the attraction to be still, to be loved, just to be. So again, if we let us practice, let's journey home to the silence of our own fathoms by being still. So let's do this again. And this time, let's go for a little bit longer. Let's do 15 minutes. And then we'll have about 10 minutes to wrap things up, okay? All right. So again, We'll just settle briefly. A few deep breaths. The next slide, please. And the next one. Okay. So a few deep breaths. Awareness of our heart. Slow inhale and deep inhale. Slower exhale. And rest. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, we have a few minutes to share. Anything anyone would like to share that they noticed or that they're wondering about at this point? Betty, just unmute yourself.
One of the things that I noticed was that there were different words that suddenly appeared. Thankful, joyful, and I love the silence. And I'm very fortunate because I live in a quiet.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Right outside the window. Uh-oh. Okay. Let's see if does that help any? Anyway,
Yeah.
different words that comforted me came
Beautiful.
during this time of quiet.
Wonderful.
I felt such a sense of compassion in this particular sitting. And the words that came to my mind were something like, silence is where the heart chooses obedience. And I'm not sure what that means. Maybe something I'm not really ready to know what that means. But the sense of compassion, like you, Betty, it was so palpable. And someone said before, the power of the group that comes through, even though we're not physically in the same location. So just that's kind of the end of my rambling, but thank you all so much for this morning.
Catherine, I wouldn't know what to say what you heard means, but what I do know is that the root word for obedience is to listen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That is helpful. That's helpful. Because I was thinking about the 3 verses in Luke. You know, we can ask, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? But if we don't listen,
Exactly.
or if we listen and then say, but I'm too busy, or I have to answer my text, or, you know, anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that wisdom's for all of us, I think. Thank you. Anything else people noticed? Joan?
Yeah, this one was interestingly a little bit harder for me. And I really struggled with staying in the now. And I realized that I spend most of my time either in the past or in the future.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm either thinking about things that have happened or how I should have said something or done something, or planning for the future, even if it's just planning what to do for dinner or planning where to go on vacation, or, you know, always thinking and kind of planning. And staying in the now is really the challenge, is to just here, just now, not 10 minutes from now, what I'm going to do or what happened yesterday. And so through that 15 minutes, I think I told myself, stay in the now more than I probably ever said. And
yeah,
that's just the challenge. So
yes.
thanks for the opportunity.
You know,
To train.
They say, you know, the fruit of the prayer or the silence or the time, it doesn't necessarily show up during the time. It shows up, as you're saying,
Other
in
time.
your daily life. And you
Uh-huh.
go, you know, people will say, oh, you seem more patient. What? Oh, okay. So again, it's kind of the humble part of not knowing what's going on, the mystery, but it's the work is being done by your availability to that, your openness to it. And then I think I go back to what Thomas Merton said, to be recollected in the moment is to be very present in the moment. And that is what makes us available to people and to whatever's there, whatever's most important. But you're right, when you're either in the past or the future, it's very hard to be available to what God may be inviting you to in that moment. Now, it's not to dismiss memories and imaginings. They have their place. But I think your insight about let's get the balance, let's find the balance of all that. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Well, then we have about 10 minutes, so we'll just a couple other things and then we'll wrap up. Okay.
And
Stephanie, yes.
yes, I wanted to, with your permission, sister, I've got everyone's names that were attending today, and I was going to email out your slides. I know some people were trying to take notes, and slides go fast, and so I was going to do that. And then I'll also, in that email, send out a brief survey, just so that we have your feedback and know how we can improve or what we're doing right. If I get all that together, I'll also try to send a link to the program if you want to share it with someone, as well as a link if you want to start joining us for Mornings with Sacred Silence. I think most of the folks here do that, but maybe not everyone. So that was all.
Okay, thank you. I think I have just a couple more slides, few more slides. They're just wrap-up slides. Okay, next one. This could be a little exercise in your journal or your quiet moment after you've had a little time, even as we close. I don't think we'll have enough time to do it and then share it, but it's a nice little prompt for just gathering up some of the fruit of this experience for you. It's very simple. Silence is, and silence is, but it can also be. And sometimes, because silence, and many times, so that silence, and it also, for silence is. And I'll just share, I'll share just one that was a gift from the first time we did this. And I think in some ways it reiterates so much of the wisdom we've shared today, but I'll just share it as an example. Silence can be a pilgrimage into my deepest self, and silence is the path. But it can also be coming home to peaceful relief. And sometimes I jump around inside because silence brings up the thinking. And many times I have to remind myself to come back so that silence can heal me within the spaces between. And it also brings me closer to my divine. For silence is my key to freedom. my resiliency key, permission to rest. So again, an offering, just a suggestion that you may want to have your own poem, you might say, about silence. And then again, just again, a little bit of a reminder. I think we said it a number of times, but this gift of awareness that can come through silence, it can be painful, certainly. But it is also the gift of noticing the commentaries, the stories we tell over and over, and of the wisdom not to over-identify yourself with that commentary, with emotionally charged or distorted thoughts. And there's enough of that flying around every day, the airwaves. So, protect yourself. Go to silence, the shield of silence. But it is also in the Christian scriptures, what Jesus says, it's revelatory of the wisdom, where he says, it's not really what's outside that causes us, the impurity or the problems. It originates within us, So the process of healing deep within is the process by which we become liberated to be our best selves, to be the persons the divine has created us to be fully. And in that, there's freedom. There's a little poem. We can go to the end of it. There's one with the whole thing. But a day of silence, this is from Hafiz. Just go one more and one more. One more. A day of silence can be a pilgrimage in itself. A day of silence can help you listen to the soul play its marvelous lute and drum. Is not most talking a crazed defense of a crumbling fort? I thought we came here to surrender in silence, to yield to light and happiness, to dance within in celebration of love's victory. So, one more. I just put this in. It was a last minute slide I added, but I'm telling you, it came up so many times during this hour and a half, the communal dimension. And of course, this picture was taken before COVID. But what's so amazing is how we experience the communal dimension of shared silence across the Zoom waves, So again, we can't, there's no way to really measure that. We never should underestimate the power of joining with others in shared silence. So again, we hope that you will find your way to the house of prayer as a place of silence that can support your practice, your own spiritual growth, your own path. And finally, we just want to say, I think there's one more slide, Stephanie, how thankful we are to have shared this time with you. And it's certainly enriched our lives, Stephanie and I. And again, we hope to see you soon. And please don't hesitate to email us if you have any other questions. It is true, on Tuesday, we have Sacred Silence, our monthly hour. It's at 7:30 Central Time. We have a variety of teachers who give a little bit of introduction, invite us into shared silence, and then invite an open conversation like we did, and then a closing. So Tuesday, Dr. Nick Cole, who is a longtime practitioner of a form of prayer called centering prayer, will be the teacher. And so Stephanie will provide you that link. And again, just thank you so very, very much. And please give us the survey feedback, because that helps us do better as we're learning, how to do programming across the Zoom waves. And hopefully at some point we'll get to do a hybrid program. We know that because of the COVID experience, our in-person workshops will now somehow always be available beyond those who can join us in person. And that's a great learning and a great opportunity to share beyond our immediate local realities. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're actually ending a couple minutes early unless anybody has anything they want to say.
Can I say something?
Yes.
This is so unbelievable. Okay, so at 11 p.m. my chirping started last night. It stopped. It just stopped. So Sheila, thank you. Thank you for that. You know, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So
Okay, Nancy,
thank
I
you
got it.
all. Thank you for this beautiful gift. So appreciated.
Nancy, I got to tell you a
Thank
practical
you.
thing. I had chirping yesterday. It means the battery's going out. I had to get a guy to come out and replace the battery.
Yeah. Well, mine's so far up. I had to have it replaced before, but can you believe it just stopped? It was going on for 12 hours and it
Well,
just stopped.
he said just because it stops doesn't mean the battery's not going out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
So
Bye.
there's
Can I just say
lots of wisdom that we share through this, venue.
I would like to encourage everybody. We'd like to say that the Tuesday morning, once a month, sacred silence is worth everything it takes
Wonderful.
to get up and be on Zoom at 7:30 in the morning. And if you come in your jammies with your hair uncombed, you don't have to be on your, you don't have to open your video feed. It is really a wonderful experience. So that's my plug for Sacred Silence.
And I
And
wanted to,
Nick is a fabulous presenter. You know, he's was the head of the board at Contemplative Outreach, Thomas Keating's organization, for 6 years, and was on the board of the House of Prayer as well. So we are very blessed with his presence. Yeah.
and I wanted to let let everyone know that if for any reason the time doesn't work for you, I have a friend from St. Margaret's who is not an early riser, and she says, oh, I used to do morning prayer, and she's like, I'm just so grateful that that's online, and I can just do it in the evening if I feel like it. So all of the videos are uploaded to the House of Prayers, both on the website as well as our YouTube channel. And so if there's a teaching, maybe you want to repeat, like Sophia Syed's was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful last month. And if you want to go back and hear that wisdom, or if you miss it, it just doesn't work with your schedule. It's like, teaching on demand, I guess, if you will. So please know that it's there. And if you ever have a problem finding the link or anything, just email, call, text me, and that'll all be in the email that I'll send out to everyone. Sister, could you close us maybe in a prayer or a blessing?
Oh gosh. Gracious God of compassion, your presence, this world you so love. Continue to open our hearts to your presence as you invite us home, as you invite us to journey with you each day. Bless all those who are in our hearts that we care so much about and have concerns for this day. We ask this in your name, and we bless your name. Amen.
Amen. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.